Welcome to Soralaw, where the dark secrets of seemingly perfect lives are brought to light. Today we delve into the chilling case of the Callahans, a power couple whose idyllic existence in Cedar Grove masked a web of betrayal, forbidden love, and murder. What happens when a successful real estate mogul discovers his wife in the arms of a younger man? How does a crime of passion shatter the peace of an entire community? Stay with us as we unravel the twisted events that led to a shocking and tragic end. In the quiet, picturesque town of Cedar Grove, the gruesome murder of Henry Callahan sent shockwaves through the community. What appeared to be a peaceful, close-knit suburban enclave was shattered by a crime of passion and betrayal that revealed the dark underbelly of seemingly idyllic lives. It was August 2015, and at the heart of this turmoil were the Callahans. Henry, a 50-year-old real estate mogul known for his charisma and business acumen, and his wife Helen, a 48-year-old boutique owner with a flair for fashion and a magnetic personality. For over 15 years, they had been pillars of the community, and their marriage seemed perfect, almost too perfect. This was how the entire community perceived them. They were close friends with their next-door neighbors, the Parkers, Simon, a university professor, and his wife Emily, a landscape architect. The Parkers had recently moved to Cedar Grove with their 21-year-old son Jerry, to escape the urban chaos and seek a quieter life. These neighbors never knew that their lives were about to be turned upside down. In fact, this is putting it lightly, their lives were about to crumble in such a way that it shook the entire community, and even the country. Henry Callahan had always been an ambitious man. He was born to a middle-class family in Detroit and, with sheer willpower and intelligence, clawed his way up through the real estate industry with a combination of charm and relentless drive. By his early 40s, he had built his real estate empire, his name synonymous with success. He was the sort of man everyone wanted to be associated with. Helen, on the other hand, came from a background of affluence. The daughter of a renowned author and a classical pianist, she grew up in an environment that valued culture and refinement. Helen had studied art history in college, dreaming of curating in a museum, but she decided to put it on hold when her boyfriend at the time wanted them to settle down. However, he eventually left her for another woman, leaving Helen heartbroken and without the will to pursue her dream. Then she met Henry, and they instantly connected. They decided to get married, and that was when something happened. 2 years into their marriage, Helen became pregnant. The family was ecstatic, and Helen herself was overjoyed. Henry took more time away from work to take care of her, and their family was the very definition of happiness. Sadly, things changed when, tragically, their child was born prematurely and did not survive. Helen's subsequent efforts to conceive were unsuccessful, and their marriage began to suffer. Let's go back a bit to how they met. Their paths crossed at a charity auction in 2000. Henry, already successful but lacking in personal connections, was immediately captivated by Helen's elegance and grace. Helen, a former model who had endured a difficult relationship and heartbreak, saw in Henry a chance to rebuild her life. He offered her emotional support and financial stability. Their courtship was swift and passionate, leading to a grand wedding. The ceremony was lavish, held in a historic mansion with silk drapes, crystal chandeliers, and a garden filled with thousands of roses. Helen wore a designer gown, while Henry looked like a distinguished businessman. The early years of their marriage were blissful. Henry's career soared, earning him wealth and accolades. He became a partner at his firm, known for his success. Helen found solace in opening a boutique, her sanctuary where she could channel her creativity and passion for fashion. The boutique thrived, becoming popular among the town's elite, and gave Helen a sense of purpose. As the years passed, their perfect life began to dull. Henry's work demanded more time, with late nights at the office and frequent business trips. The once inseparable couple drifted apart. Helen, feeling increasingly isolated, poured herself into her boutique. She expanded her business, hosted events, and sought to fill the void with her work. The loss of their child was a turning point, a silent wound that neither spoke of, but both felt deeply. The nursery they had prepared remained empty, a constant reminder of their grief. The inability to conceive again added to the strain. Helen's dreams of a family faded, replaced by emptiness. She attended fertility treatments alone, enduring the emotional and physical toll in silence. Henry, though supportive, buried himself in work, unable to confront the shared pain. Their home, once filled with laughter and warmth, grew cold and silent. Helen would sit in the nursery for hours, surrounded by the unfulfilled promise of motherhood. Henry, when he was home, retreated into his study, drowning himself in work to escape the unbearable reality. Their conversations became brief, lacking intimacy. Helen's boutique sadly became a refuge from the emptiness of her home. She spent long hours there, finding temporary solace in activity and creative projects. Yet every evening, she returned to a house that felt increasingly like a stranger's home. The distance between them was palpable, a chasm neither knew how to bridge. Their shared grief and unspoken fears festered, creating tension in their lives. By the summer of 2015, the Callahans' marriage had become a shadow of what it used to be. To outsiders, they were still the golden couple. Henry was on the verge of closing a monumental deal that would solidify his status in the industry. Helen's boutique was flourishing, her designs gaining a loyal following. But behind closed doors, they were simply roommates, more like strangers. Conversations were sparse, focusing on schedules and social events. Physical intimacy had become rare, each touch a reminder of their unspoken grief and unmet expectations. Both Henry and Helen found it easier to maintain the illusion of happiness than to confront the chasm that had grown between them. Unbeknownst to them, this fragile balance was about to be disrupted in a way that would affect not just their lives, but the entire community of Cedar Grove. The Parkers had moved into the house next door to the Callahans in early 2011, seeking a fresh start. Simon, a distinguished literature professor, had taken a position at a nearby university, drawn by the promise of a quieter life away from the bustling city. Emily, a successful landscape architect, embraced the move as an opportunity to bring her creative vision to new projects. Their son Jerry, a college junior studying environmental science, was spending the summer at home working on a local conservation project. The Parkers quickly became known for their warmth and intelligence, fitting seamlessly into the laid-back vibe of Cedar Grove. Simon's engaging lectures at the university earned him respect, while Emily's stunning garden designs became the talk of the neighborhood. Emily, though initially reluctant about the move, found herself enjoying the tranquility and natural beauty of their new home. It was during a neighborhood block party in late June that Jerry Parker first saw Helen Callahan in a new light. The Callahans were hosting the event, and Henry, as usual, was the center of attention, discussing his latest business ventures. Helen, feeling out of place among the crowd, had retreated to the patio to get some fresh air. Jerry, seeking a break from socializing, happened to wander outside at the same moment. Their eyes met, and Jerry offered Helen a tentative smile. They struck up a conversation about gardening, a topic Helen had recently taken an interest in to fill her lonely days. Jerry, with his knowledge of environmental science, shared tips and suggestions, and a bond began to form. Over the next few weeks, Helen and Jerry found reasons to spend time together. Helen invited Jerry to help with her garden, and Jerry was glad for the chance to apply his studies practically. As you might expect, their first kiss happened one rainy afternoon in early July. Jerry had come over to discuss a new garden layout, and as they worked, a sudden downpour forced them to seek shelter in the Callahan sunroom. As they stood by the window, watching the rain, an unspoken tension filled the air. Helen, feeling a connection she hadn't felt in years, leaned in and kissed Jerry. For Jerry, the kiss was a revelation, a mix of excitement and fear. Despite the complexity of their feelings, they found themselves drawn together, their interactions growing more frequent and intense. They were careful, aware of the risks. Their meetings were discreet, often in Helen's boutique or secluded spots around town. Yet, as the summer progressed, maintaining their secret became increasingly difficult. They almost got caught several times, with close calls and near discoveries heightening their anxiety. But the intensity of their emotions kept them coming back. Helen felt a resurgence of joy and passion, something totally different from her life with Henry. Jerry, captivated by Helen's sophistication and the thrill of their forbidden relationship, found himself developing genuine feelings and falling deeper and deeper for the older married woman. On August 10, 2015, Cedar Grove awoke to another blistering summer day. For Henry Callahan, it was a pivotal day. He had a crucial meeting that could secure his largest deal yet. He left early, leaving Helen in bed, lost in her thoughts. Helen, knowing Henry would be gone all day, sent a text to Jerry asking him to come over in the afternoon. At this point, Jerry was growing increasingly uncomfortable with his feelings for Helen. He loved the woman, but this love just didn't make any sense at all. Jerry decided it was time to end things and saw the message as an opportunity to confront his feelings. He replied, agreeing to meet. The day dragged on for both of them. Helen went through the motions at her boutique, distracted and anxious. Jerry, working on his conservation project, found it hard to focus. At 1:30 p.m., Jerry made his way to the Callahan house, his heart pounding. Helen welcomed him with a nervous smile, leading him to the sunroom where they had first kissed. Jerry began to speak, but Helen, misinterpreting his hesitation, silenced him with a kiss. Despite their misgivings, they gave in to the moment, their need for each other overwhelming their doubts. Meanwhile, across town, Henry Callahan was in his office, his frustration mounting. The numbers for his deal weren't aligning, and he knew he faced a long night of revisions and negotiations. Henry made a snap decision: he would go home, regroup, and collect his thoughts, then return to the office later to finish up before dinner. At 2:15 p.m., his car pulled into the driveway of their lakeside house in Crestwood. He noticed Jerry Parker's rusty truck parked a little way down the street, but thought nothing of it. Probably helping Helen with some errands, he mused as he unlocked the front door. The house was quiet, but something felt off. A half-empty glass of orange juice sat on the kitchen counter, odd, because Helen didn't even like orange juice. Then he heard a muffled sound coming from upstairs. Frowning, he climbed the stairs, the noise growing louder as he approached the master bedroom. What he saw when he opened the door would be forever seared into his memory. His wife, the woman he had loved for 15 years, was in their bed with Jerry Parker, the 21-year-old neighbor's son who he never thought was close to her. To Henry's shock turned to rage. Before he could think, he lunged forward, shouting and asking what the hell they were doing. Jerry, in a panic, scrambled to get off the bed, knocking over the nightstand in the process. Helen screamed, trying to pull the sheets around herself. Henry's fury propelled him forward, and he grabbed Jerry by the collar, yanking him off the bed. Jerry struggled, gasping, pleading with Henry that he could explain, but Henry was beyond reason, his fists flying in the chaos. Jerry's hand found the heavy lamp on the bedside table. Desperation driving him, he swung it wildly. The lamp connected with Henry's head with a sickening thud. Henry staggered, his eyes wide with shock and betrayal, before collapsing to the floor. The room fell into a haunting silence. Helen's scream pierced the quiet as she scrambled to cover herself and process what had just happened. Blood pooled rapidly around Henry's motionless form. Jerry dropped the lamp, his hands trembling, horror and disbelief etched on his face. He looked at Helen, his voice barely a whisper. "What have we done?" Helen, her voice shaking but determined, insisted they hide the body. She told Jerry that she couldn't let him go to jail, her eyes wild with fear. Jerry nodded numbly. They quickly dressed, their minds racing with panic and fear. They wrapped Henry's body in a sheet, struggling under its weight as they carried it down the stairs. The task was grueling, each step filled with dread and regret. They finally managed to heave Henry's body into the bed of Jerry's truck, panting from the exertion. Helen drove Henry's car to a nearby parking lot, leaving it there to make it look like he had gone out. She then returned home, where she and Jerry began the grim task of cleaning up the blood. Every swipe of the cloth felt like a betrayal, the scent of bleach mingling with their guilt. The master bedroom, once a sanctuary, now felt like a crime scene. For 2 days, Helen and Jerry avoided each other, the weight of their secret pressing down on them. Helen answered calls from Henry's office, telling his colleagues that he was away on a business trip. But when Henry failed to show up for a critical meeting, his office sent someone to the house to check on him. The HR manager stood at the door, suspicion clouding his eyes as he asked why she hadn't filed a missing person report. Helen, her heart pounding, tried to stay calm, lying that she thought he was on a business trip. To deflect suspicion, she called the police right then and there. The police arrived quickly, their presence adding to the tension. They began investigating and questioning Helen, who struggled to maintain her composure. Meanwhile, Jerry was back at school, consumed by guilt and fear. He had cut off communication with Helen, and they had agreed not to speak until the situation calmed down. Detective Laura Mitchell was assigned to the case, a seasoned investigator with a sharp mind. She immediately sensed something was off. She started with routine questions, but quickly delved deeper. Helen's story was full of holes, and her nervousness was palpable. Mitchell's keen eyes missed nothing, noting every tremor in Helen's voice and every inconsistency in her account. The case was becoming more complex, and the shadows of suspicion grew longer over Cedar Grove. Detective Mitchell began her questioning, keenly observing Helen's every move. She asked Helen about the last time she saw her husband. Helen, trying to sound convincing, claimed he had left for a business trip on Monday morning. When pressed for details about the trip, Helen shook her head, stating that he often didn't mention his destinations as it was part of his job. Mitchell nodded and made notes, requesting access to Henry's phone records and emails. Helen, feeling trapped, agreed. Over the next few days, the investigation intensified. Mitchell's team found nothing in Henry's phone and email records to indicate a business trip. Neighbors mentioned seeing Jerry's truck at the Callahan house the day Henry disappeared, prompting Mitchell to return to Helen. When questioned about Jerry's truck, Helen lied, saying he was helping with some yard work. Mitchell, skeptical, noted the implausibility of yard work in the middle of a hot July afternoon but let it slide for the moment, shifting her focus to Jerry. Jerry, struggling with the memory of Henry's lifeless body, was approached by Mitchell at his school. When questioned about his presence at the Callahan house, Jerry repeated Helen's lie about yard work, his voice shaking. Mitchell, sensing his fear, didn't believe him. She suggested that coming clean would be better for him, but Jerry maintained his composure and insisted he knew nothing. Mitchell knew she needed more evidence. She called in forensic teams to the Callahan house, where they discovered traces of blood that had been hastily cleaned. Helen's story began to unravel further. Mitchell noted inconsistencies in Helen's timeline and her increasing anxiety. Despite Helen's efforts to maintain the facade, the pressure mounted. The breakthrough came from an anonymous tipster who had seen Helen and Jerry together frequently, their interaction suspiciously intimate. Mitchell investigated their relationship more deeply, uncovering secret emails and text messages that revealed the depth of their affair and their desperate attempts to keep it hidden. Confronted with the evidence, Helen's calm demeanor began to crack. When asked to explain the communications with Jerry, she tried to downplay their relationship as mere friendship, but Mitchell was relentless. The detective pointed out that friends don't exchange such messages and mentioned the blood traces found in the house. Helen stood her ground, insisting that Henry had left for a business trip. Mitchell turned her attention back to Jerry, who had been avoiding contact with Helen. She arranged for Jerry to be brought in for further questioning. Feeling the pressure, Jerry decided to hire a lawyer. During the interrogation, Mitchell laid out the evidence piece by piece, eroding Jerry's defenses. She mentioned the blood found in the house and the lack of a business trip, pressing for the truth. Jerry's silence, advised by his lawyer, spoke volumes. Forensic experts confirmed the blood evidence as Henry's. With mounting evidence, Mitchell obtained a search warrant for Jerry's truck, where they found fibers matching the sheets from the Callahan house and further blood traces. Henry's body was discovered in the nearby parking lot, hastily concealed. With irrefutable evidence in hand, Mitchell moved swiftly to arrest Helen and Jerry. Helen was taken into custody, her face a mask of resignation, while Jerry was arrested, his fate sealed by the overwhelming proof of their crime. The community of Cedar Grove was rocked by the scandal, the idyllic facade shattered forever. As the trial progressed, more secrets emerged. Henry's colleagues testified about his mounting stress and frequent arguments with Helen. Neighbors spoke of the tension they had sensed in the Callahan household. The jury faced a complex web of motivations and actions, each thread leading to the tragic climax. Helen took the stand, her composure cracking under the weight of her guilt. She admitted to the affair but insisted she never meant for Henry to die. She described the moments before Henry's death, explaining how Jerry, in a panic, had grabbed the lamp. Jerry, almost in tears, recounted the fateful day with a mixture of regret and sorrow. He described the confrontation with Henry, the struggle, and the moment he struck Henry in a blind panic. Jerry's parents sat in the courtroom, their faces etched with grief and disbelief. They listened as their son detailed how he had become entangled in Helen's life and how his actions had led to Henry's death. They couldn't reconcile the image of their beloved son with the events that had transpired. Their sorrow was palpable, a stark contrast to the stoic facade Jerry tried to maintain. Mitchell's testimony was crucial. She outlined the investigation, the inconsistencies in Helen and Jerry's stories, and the forensic evidence that ultimately led to their arrest. She detailed the discovery of Henry's body, the fibers in Jerry's truck, and the blood traces in the Callahan house. Her methodical presentation painted a clear picture of guilt. The courtroom was tense as the jury deliberated for days. The weight of the decision was evident, the silence in the room almost unbearable. When the jury finally returned with a verdict, the foreman announced the decision: Jerry Parker, we find you guilty of second-degree murder. Helen Callahan, we find you guilty of being an accessory to murder. Helen was sentenced to 15 years in prison, while Jerry received a 25-year sentence. The community of Cedar Grove was left to pick up the pieces, forever changed by the events that had unfolded. Detective Mitchell, haunted by the case, couldn't help but wonder what might have been if different choices had been made. The Callahans and Parkers had been ordinary people, their lives intertwined in ways no one could have predicted. The tragedy that struck was a stark reminder of how fragile the facade of normalcy can be. In the quiet aftermath, Cedar Grove struggled to return to its peaceful existence. The shadow of the Callahan case loomed large, a constant reminder that even the most idyllic communities can harbor dark secrets. The Parker family, shattered by the revelations and the loss of their son to the prison system, became reclusive, their pain a testament to the far-reaching consequences of the tragic affair. The Callahan house, once a symbol of success and harmony, stood empty, a silent witness to the life that once thrived within its walls. As the tale of the Callahans and the Parkers comes to a close, we're reminded of how easily the facade of a perfect life can crumble under the weight of secrets and betrayal. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the dark side of suburbia. But this is just one of many stories we have to tell. Here on Soralaw, we dig deep into the mysteries that lie beneath the surface of ordinary lives, uncovering the shocking truths that lead to tragedy. If you found this story compelling, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next video. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and we'll see you in the next episode, where even more gripping tales await.